I know a lot of you are saying to yourselves, he's asking for a miracle to happen. He's expecting people to change all of a sudden. Well, you're wrong. It's no miracle. It's no miracle because I see it happen once every year, and so do you, at Christmas time. There's something swell about the spirit of Christmas, to see what it does to people, all kinds of people. Now, why can't that spirit, that same warm Christmas spirit, last the whole year round? Gosh, if it ever did, if each and every John Doe would make that spirit last 365 days out of the year, we'd develop such a strength, we'd create such a tidal wave of goodwill that no human force could stand against it. Yes, sir, my friends. The meek can only inherit the earth when the John Does start loving their neighbors. You better start right now. Don't wait till the game is called on account of darkness. Wake up, John Doe. You're the hope of the world.
John, you were wonderful.
Let's get out of here.
Now you're talking.
I love that Barbara Stanwyck's character is moved to tears by her own words.
I forgot about that part. I haven't seen this movie since I was a teenager, so I know I felt the same way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Book versus Movie, the podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. My name is Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
So this is a movie that's come up for people have suggested this to us for quite a while. We did not realize, though, when we decided to do this movie, we just chose it last week because we saw that the movie was easily available and that the source material, the original story, was free. So I swear, we had no idea of the timeliness of this particular film to this particular week in American history. If you are listening to this later, it is January 19th, 20th of 2025. And yeah, we're going to get into all of that in just a minute. But if you are brand new, welcome. We are delighted that you are here. This is a podcast where we talk about films that really we say book, but really we mean any film that's been adapted from some kind of like a literary source, whether that's a novel or a work of nonfiction, a short story, a song, a poem, even. We've done it all, plays. And our only ground rules are that, number one, the film has to be streaming on a major platform. And two, we have to be able to get our eyeballs on the source material without too much trouble or expense, because we like people to be able to follow along with us. And if you would like to get previews of upcoming episodes or get some extra background info, meet other listeners of this podcast, and interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
These are all places, by the way, you can also send us your suggestions. So we do have, everything is right now of this minute. We have a basic Facebook page. You'd be sure to like it. The episodes are posted there first, but we're very much so interactive in our private Facebook group. So you type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join on Facebook. And we have a couple of lists there maintained by our superfan Thaddeus of shows we've covered in the past, titles we've covered in the past, titles people have ideas for the future. There's two different there. We are also on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Book versus Movie. And in those places, you spell that all out, Book versus a Movie. And then we have an old-timey email, Book versus Movie Podcast, spell it all out, at gmail.com. Give us your comments, give us your suggestions. We're always looking for ideas. Trust us. We're always looking for ideas. Also, if you would like some stickers, and Margot, I have some coming out to you. We have some stickers we can send to you. Just email us your address and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help support us, you can also join us on Patreon.
Yes, it's Patreon. We've been doing the show for 10 years now. So we have everything now from 2022. And then previous to that is going to be on our Patreon wall, which is just mind boggling. We just put up Hunt for the Wilder People, which was a really fun one that we covered.
Oh, I bought that film just because I loved it so much. Gosh, it's a great movie.
I still Ricky Baker. I still sing that in my head. The Lost also on there, by the way. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, Pinocchio, Beauty and the Beast, The Bad Seed, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, In a Lonely Place, Elvis and Me. All of those are on our Patreon wall. We also have some free episodes on there. Some of the holiday episodes we've done in the past are on there. We also put clips from the movies that we're covering for free on Patreon, and also our old episodes, as we like to call it, when we really didn't know what we were doing, but we just had a lot of enthusiasm. If you can actually listen to one of those, and you're like, I think you guys should redo this one. I was thinking this the other day, by the way, Marco. I was thinking the Planet of the Apes. That might be a fun one to redo.
Oh, yeah, that might be good.
That was
Yeah.
really, really fun. So it's Patreon, and all of you that support us there, thank you so very much. We really appreciate it. But we'd also ask if you can leave us a review wherever you get your podcast. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe. But if you can leave us a review wherever that is, or just click the stars or whatever they ask you to do, we'd really appreciate it. It helps us find our people.
Yeah, we're just so glad you're here. And so I'm not really sure where to begin. Like I said, I swear we did not you may not believe this. We really didn't know. We really didn't know what we were getting into this week with this book and this film. And I, for one, had this film confused with some other film. Like maybe last week I might even have said like, "Oh yes, I haven't seen that film in a while, but I like it." I no, I've never seen this film before this week. I had it confused with some other Barbara Stanwyck vehicle because it's Frank Capra. We'll talk about this when we get to the film, but he loved working with Barbara Stanwyck. And I certainly had never read this story. Uh, this is an author that we talked about before, not too long ago. We won't go into him too much. There's not really that much available, as I recall, anyway. But our
Right.
author, Richard Connell,
Yes, he was
and
born.
oh, go ahead.
Okay, so he was born October 17th, 1893. He died of a heart attack very young. He lived to 1949. He's most famous for his story, The Most Dangerous Game, which was a short story that he wrote in 1924. And it's one of the most popular short stories of all time. And we talked about the movie that's attached to it. He was born in Poughkeepsie, New York. He served in World War I, and he wrote for many publications. He eventually moved to Los Angeles, and he worked on several screenplays. The Most Dangerous Game, I think, would be probably the most popular one. And maybe this story would be second. But they only took this short story, which, by the way, it appeared in Galaxy magazine in 1922. So you have to think about what was America like in 1922. We're out of World War I. It's the Roaring '20s are just starting to happen. The Jazz Age is starting to happen. But also, when we came home from World War I, which was a very bloody war, and there were a lot of casualties, they also brought home the Spanish flu, which for over a year, we were in quarantine, and people were, So this is right after that. Like, people are just starting to go out again, and people are, have dealt with life issues like life and death, and what does it mean to be loyal, and all these things. And then we went into the Roaring '20s. So this is a story that is, it's called A Reputation.
It's called A Reputation. Yeah, it's not a long story at all. The Most Dangerous Game, by the way, was a great story. We really liked it a lot. And this is he definitely has a distinct style, although I don't know quite how to describe it to somebody, he's very doesn't hit you over the head with details. We jump right in, and like Margot said, this is pre the crash, the stock market crash, and the Jazz Age is revving up, and you have Oh, the similarities. You have a great disparity between the rich and the not rich. And the rich are really running things, and they have this, privileged life, and the story opens in a private club for rich people. I forget what the name of the club
The
is.
Heterogeneous Club.
Oh, right. Heterogeneous. The heterogeneous.
Heterogeneous, sorry.
That's right. And there's a lot, the poking fun. And it's all of these rich people, and they just go to hang out with other rich people and talk about each other, gossip and network like people do. And there's this one character, this one fellow who is a member of the club. We don't really learn very much about him. What is his name again?
Saunders Rook. Excuse me, Rook.
Saunders Rook. And I'm sure there's a chess
Yes.
metaphor there, but I don't play chess, so it is lost on me. So Rook is a member of the club, but he's not a popular guy. People don't really take an interest in him. He's one of those people that kind of hang out on the fringes of conversation and chime in from time to time, and people don't really pay any attention to him. And so he's not very influential in this club of influential people who are running things. And one day, to just get their attention, to as we would say today, to get clicks, he just casually says, trigger warning, because
Yes.
both in the story and in the film, there is a great deal of talk about suicide. And they talk about it in terms that were talked about, in the 20s and 30s and 40s. So he very casually says, "Oh, I'm going to commit suicide on Christmas Eve." And this raises a few eyebrows, not as many as you would think, but a few of the people go, "What? Oh, what's that about?" And he says, "Oh, society. I've just had it. So this is all I can do. It's the only way." And so then people start talking about him. "Oh, did you hear about Mr. Rook? Oh, you know Mr. Rook?" And and the more and more, the higher up in the food chain at this club start talking about Mr. Rook. And do you really think he's going to go through with it? And so he kind of dines out on this lie. He has no intention of actually doing it. Um, he becomes more and more popular. He gains more and more attention, and he never really gives any like actual substantive commentary beyond like, "Oh, society, it's really the only way that I can think of to manage." And and the story is really about how this ridiculous, completely unsubstantiated um lie. Again, he's not the he's not it's not like he's a victim of society. He's obviously extremely well off, or he would not be a member of this club.
Right.
He's bored and feels ignored. So he's not suffering. He's not like an oppressed, a worker, or one of the many unemployed that we're starting to build up, or none of this. He's fine. He just feels ignored, and so he makes up this lie. And that's really this. I mean, and then eventually he becomes ensnared in his lie.
He starts to kind of like, as he's talking to people and they're striking up conversations, and the more he talks about it, the more he convinces himself, this is the most interest anyone's ever taken in me. I mean, there's a line here I want to read. It's they were talking about him just being at the club and what the members thought of him, and he thought they said, "Oh yes, Saunders Rook. I believe there is such a fellow around the club. Let me see. No, I don't think he's very tall or very short or very dark or very light. In fact, I don't believe he's very anything." This is what he hears. He's kind of at this point. You get the, like, he's not married. He doesn't have a family. He goes to the club a few nights a week to have dinner and I guess smoke cigars and drink and stuff. But yeah, I think he's sort of like, he's a person kind of falling through the cracks, and then he finds a way to get attention, and then he realizes, like, oh well, now it's either that or get off the pot. What am I going to do?
Exactly. Because he has now built himself a reputation.
And so he goes to Central Park, and in the very end, and he's met by, there's the governor talks about this. Other people are all talking about this person who says he's going to do this thing at midnight on Christmas Eve. And he goes to Central Park, and he goes to the reservoir. And at the very end, he says, "I do this as a protest against the rotten state of civilization, Saunders Rook." He blotted it neatly with a pocket blotter. He looked up at the smiling sky and sighed deeply. Still, after all, a reputation is a reputation. Then he jumped.
That's the story. But it's this guy, he tells a lie. He pretends to be somebody who has principles in order to be popular. And then he becomes a prisoner of that lie.
Mhm.
And loses his life loses his life rather than lose his reputation.
Yeah, he finally has a reputation,
Yeah.
but it's a terrible one. So he ultimately decides to do the thing he says he's going to do. And that's how they leave the story. It's a short story. It takes you 10 minutes to read, if that. And so now we go to Frank Capra. And here it is. It's 1941. And Capra has put out all these populist movies. And we've talked about It's a Wonderful Life. We talked about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Right. There have been, and so his political ideas and how he views people understand and know it. He has a voice that he uses. He's an Italian American. He was born in Italy. He came to America when he was 6 years old, and he loves America, but he also, he likes the ideals of America, and he's worried that we're losing those ideals. This is 1940 to 41 when they're putting this project together, and then they film it, and then they put it out. And America at this time is not quite involved in World War II. Fascism is taking over Europe, and America is deciding, do we participate? Because during World War I, we lost so many people. We lost so many, and then America became broke because we had the Great Depression, that we didn't really have a full-on Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines to fight. Like, you had to get that all together and then send people over. So people were really wondering, like, is this our fight? What happens if we don't get involved? And then, of course, in December of 41, we have Pearl Harbor, which is then all the reason we need to ramp up World War II and join the Allies.
Yeah. And a lot of these themes were things that he explored in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which we talked about. And he has a definite point of view. He's very, very pro the United States and what the country is supposed to stand for. And it's something that comes up throughout his work. So even in It's a Wonderful Life, as the we have the brother who is the serviceman and the war hero, and the brother who stays home. And Capra's such an interesting guy. He has so many relationships with people that he has a long career. First of all, like from the silent era, he lived to be, was he like 90 or something?
Yeah, almost 90.
94.
Wow.
Yeah. So a very, very long career and very successful, of course. And he had therefore like a lot of really interesting collaborations that he had throughout his career. One of which was, of course, with Jimmy Stewart, one of which was with Gary Cooper, who we're going to talk about today, Barbara Stanwyck, who we're going to talk about today, our screenwriter Siskin, who we're going to talk about today, but also the lighting people, the sound people, the sets. He had these relationships, and so when you look at the body of his work, there are these themes that weave in and out, partly because of the people who he's working with. And I think he must have been really fun to work with, because a lot of people worked with him multiple times. And this movie, obviously, like I said, I had confused it with something else.
You have to kind of prep yourself for this movie, and
Let us warn you,
Yes.
especially this week.
Right, especially the way things are right now. I think I saw it. It was called the Little Theater in Ridgewood, and it was just this little movie house where you could see movies. And I didn't realize then, but they were showing movies that were in public domain, because that's how they could make money, right? And so there was a bunch of movies that came out in the 20s, 30s, and 40s that in the 80s and 90s, people were having these little revival houses and finding them. And that's how I saw it. And I remember I went with my best friend and we cried our eyes out at the end because we didn't know what we were going to see. But it was my introduction to Gary Cooper, who I just have a big crush on. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. I always forget about Gary Cooper, and then I watch a Gary Cooper film and I'm like, why is anybody not talking about Gary Cooper?
him. I also did recently a Sopranos rewatch, and that's one of Tony Soprano's big thing. What happened to Gary Cooper?
That's right. I get it.
I'm on board. I totally understand. I mean, handsome. He seemed to have a conscience. He seemed to have a soul about him.
But also, well, we'll get into it in a minute. But do we want to show the trailer?
Let's show the trailer.
Yeah, let's show the trailer.
John Doe!
The crowd's beginning to riot. They're starting to throw things. Somebody's going to get hurt.
If you can't lay your dirty fingers on a decent idea and twist it and squeeze it and stuff it into your own pocket, you slap it down. Like dogs, if you can't eat something, you bury it.
Please listen to me. Please, I can explain everything, John. I didn't know what they were going to do. Let me go with you, John.
I
So
forgot to
so
mention if you're just I'm sorry, I forgot to mention if you're listening on audio, it was mostly music. I'm sorry, it was a lot
that's
of
exactly.
visuals.
I'm sorry
So
about
watch
that.
our YouTube if you want to see the clips.
It's a lot of reading. The trailer is demanding a great deal of reading from the audience, and it is promising
A lot.
everything. Interestingly, so this is Capra. So Capra, the trailer for again, for those of you who were just listening to the audio, the trailer, most of the trailer is devoted to this is Frank Capra. He gave you this, he gave you that, he gave you this and movie and that movie and da, 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 and if you thought that was great, wait until you see Meet John Doe. This is Capra's first film with Warner Brothers. And so, Warner Brothers, interestingly, and this is, not like them, um, Warner Brothers is not leading with the fact that it's a Warner Brothers picture. They're leading with the fact that it's a Frank Capra picture. And they're listing, again, all of his works that Mr. Smith and Can't Take It With You and Mr. Deeds and all of that. That's really what they're selling. It's well into the movie before they're like, "And it's a Warner Brothers picture." Um,
It's very
it's
step
giving
on. This
yeah.
movie has everything.
Everything. Oh, yes, it's like, it's funny, it's sad, it's tragic and dramatic, it's
It's romantic.
hilarious. It literally says all of that. And, yeah, it is promising, it's gonna change your life, everything. Um, and they're not wrong. It's just
No.
a lot of fanfare about the fact that Frank Capra is now at Warner Brothers. Is that the trailer? It's a long trailer. And it's mostly about the fact that it's Capra, which is fine. They can't show clips of any of his previous movies because 'cause they're not from that studio. So,
Very true.
um, but it's also hailing the cast. It's a phenomenal cast. Let's talk about this. I mean, it says it gives you all of the stars, the trailer, it gives you all the stars, and then it says that there are 5,000 people in the cast. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is a lot. There are a lot of crowd
Crowd
scenes in
scenes.
this that are extremely impressive, I thought. But
Yes.
let's talk about our main cast.
Okay, so it's like once again, it's directed by Frank Capra. The screenplay is by Robert Riskin. It was nominated. I was surprised because I looked up the Academy Awards for 1942, which is when this would have been appearing, and it only came up for the screenplay, not the performances. So maybe I'll look up in a second, like all the people that were there. But we have Gary Cooper as our John Doe. He's Long John Willoughby, and he is a former baseball player who had an injury and is now broke. He doesn't know what to do with his life.
We should also mention that the story takes place in real time. So it's in 1940, 41. So this is now after the crash. So in a very different environment than the original story. And much like when we discussed It's a Wonderful Life, Capra, who's really good at adapting existing material, like You Can't Take It With You, for instance, which was a stage play. He's also very good at taking a kernel of a story, of an idea, and turning it, fleshing it out, and making it much more meaningful than the original material is, and but using the same. He's a really good adapter. He's really good at filming adaptations and picking the right people to write the screenplay, which we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But so instead of our character being a fairly well-off guy who's suffering from a bit of ennui and is tired of being ignored at his social club, we have someone who has genuinely come on very hard times and has been living under a bridge, for a while. Basically, we're led to believe, like, it's been a few years. He's really been on hard times. So Gary Cooper, again, that's our Long John Willoughby, who is a former minor league ball player, who has fallen on hard times. And then we have Barbara Stanwyck.
I mean, they don't make them like her anymore.
Oh my goodness.
My goodness, that woman is a force of nature. I believe everything she's
Where did they
saying.
even find Barbara Stanwyck? Where did they even find her? She's so good, but she's not the pinup girl,
No,
you know? But she can be so funny and so dramatic.
And
I
sexy.
and sexy. In my childhood, I was such a fan of, was it The Big Valley
Oh, yes.
with, the Bionic Man, $6 Million Man, and Linda Evans,
Yes.
but Barbara Stanwyck was the matriarch on that show. The Thornbirds, I mean,
I
really
remember
long,
the Thornbirds, boy.
and she's Stella Dallas, she'll break your heart. This is a really fascinating character for her, and we'll get into that in a minute. So we've got, those are our 2 main leads. We've got Gary Cooper, we've got Barbara Stanwyck. We've got Edward Arnold as our D.B. Norton, our Rupert Murdoch type.
Yes.
The casting is so good on this.
Yeah, Walter Brennan as the Colonel, who's, oh
And
my
come
God,
on.
come on.
Wonderful.
Spring Bynington for Mrs. Mitchell, James Gleason,
Everybody's so good.
Henry Connell, they keep saying. I want to say Connell, but it's Connell. Gene
Mhm.
Lockhart as Mayor Lovett, Rod LaRocque as Ted Shelton. I mean, it's a huge cast of people. I was obsessed with Ann Doran as Mrs. Hanson, and we'll get to her in a second. But it's phenomenal people that are, and as Margaret was just saying, Capra was just a very good filmmaker, and he went, like she said, from the silent era, and then when the silent era was over, a lot of people lost their careers because they didn't know how to record sound. People had sometimes like really thick Brooklyn accents, and there was the first movie studio was actually in Brooklyn. Anyway, so it's this phenomenal rounding out of people, and the way the story changes is we meet our Anne, who's our Barbara Stanwyck. The paper that she's working for, the Bulletin, is now called the New Bulletin. So the paper that they're working for has been bought out.
Okay, already I'm triggered.
I
So
know.
we begin with this, the facade of this old newspaper building. This newspaper, it's like the Gray Lady. It's just been there forever, and I forget what the original motto of it was, but basically kind of like democracy dies in darkness. Like a free press means a free people, I think is what the original motto of the building. And a worker is chiseling the old motto off of the building and putting a new sign on, and it says a streamlined news for a streamlined time, or something to that effect. Kind of like our what is our DOGE supposed to
Yes.
stand for? Yes, kind of like that. And because why? Because it's been bought by a millionaire, which today would be a billionaire. Imagine that. Some rich guy decided he needed to control the press. Interesting. So he buys this newspaper. Mr. D.B. Norton is the rich guy. He buys the newspaper, and he hires this guy, a lackey of his named Connell. Is that his name? Henry Connell, who's played by James Gleason, to come in and just chop heads all over the place. And there's scene where this guy, he tells the guy to go in and fire everybody. And this guy walks in, and without saying anything, he points at somebody. He goes, he's firing people, pointing and clicking and pointing and clicking. And one of the people that he points and clicks is Barbara Stanwyck. And Barbara Stanwyck, all of these men are like, oh god, here we go. And they pack up their stuff, and they,
Eeyore.
the Eeyore, and they start leaving the building. But Barbara Stanwyck's like, whoa, hang on a second. I need this job.
She pops into their office and says, look, you pay me $30. Look, I take care of my mother. I have siblings. I have, I have responsibilities. I need this job. And then she says, look, you pay me 30 a week. I'll take 25. I'll even take $20 a week. Just please. And they say, nah, we're going in we're streamlined. So we're going in a new direction. But they said, oh, before you leave and get your last paycheck, give us your one last column. And they were saying she's all something in lace. Like it's all like she does
lavender
and
lace.
So you're too girly. You're too
girly. And we want, they say, yes, we're interested in things that are going to move newspapers. We want fireworks. And so she's like, oh, great. So she goes and she starts packing up her things. She has submitted her final column, but somebody comes in and tells her like, oh, your column's not quite long enough. It's a little too short. You're going to need to add, X number of words to kind of fill it out so you can get your final paycheck. And so then she gets a little idea. One of the things that I think is interesting about Barbara Stanwyck's character, at no moment does she pretend to have any kind of journalistic integrity.
No.
None. She's very clear that she needs a paycheck, and this is all about a paycheck to her. So she's like, "Oh, they want fireworks? I'll give them fireworks." And she sits down and there's this whole montage. She's typing away. She's furiously typing away, and she's concentrating, and she's sweating, and her hair's getting messy as she's tapping away at the typewriter. It's so funny. And then she's like, "Shick," and she gives it. There you go. And the editorial assistant is like, "Whoa, this is all lies." And she's like, "Yep." Take
Get my
it in.
paycheck now. Bye. I'm going to go get a drink and try to forget all this. Right. But so she writes a column and she creates a story about a guy that she's calling John Doe. And he is so much in despair about the state of the world that he is promising to take his own life on Christmas Eve as a rebellion, I guess, of some sort against the loneliness and the awfulness of the world. It's just too much. He can't handle it. He's disappointed in what's happening to our country. He's disappointed what happened with our people. And he just like, I can't take it for another second. So then.
And he says he's going to jump off of City Hall. Specifically, that's his threat that he's making. And so now we have a public uproar about this letter. So her column says like, "Oh, I got this letter from this man who's, here's what he said," which is all a lie. And but people read it and they think that it's true. And so you have wealthy, people and powerful people in the city calling up this new guy, Connell, the one who was firing everybody, and being like, "What's this? How could you possibly let this happen? We must know. You must give him a job." And the mayor is like, "Why is he singling my place of business out? Like, why City Hall? Like, I'm just trying to do my mayor job here." He's great, by the way. Gene Lockhart, who we've talked about before, the father of Lassie's mom. And it's just, it's a lot. This story is really strange because we do a lot of very quick flipping between comedy and tragedy, because it is a time where there are many unemployed people who are living under bridges and having hard times. And so but we're making kind of like some comedy out of like, why does he want to jump off a City Hall? And with the mayor. And so the wealthy guy who has bought the newspaper, and we also get a glimpse of the governor. The governor's like, "Wait a minute, I smell a rat." This wealthy guy, it can't be a coincidence that this letter comes out in this newspaper that just got bought by this billionaire. That seems like this guy's got some kind of political agenda going on here. And so but it's bad press for the paper. So the billionaire tells his lackey, who was firing everybody, that you got to find this John Doe, because he thinks it's real. You got to find this John Doe and give him a job. And the guy's like, "Okay, I guess we'll put a call out like, hey, if you're one of the thousands and thousands of unemployed people who maybe wrote this letter, come by and we'll give you a job, I guess." And all these people show up, all these men who have been on hard times. And it's a commentary about that too,
Right.
how many of them show up with all of their various stories. And meanwhile, Barbara Stanwyck, with this clever little idea of hers, has wheedled herself back into a job. So now she has a job managing this whole John Doe business. And this is the part that I found a little bit implausible, of them to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can have your job back and manage this." I find it hard to believe that they would take a woman that mysteriously, I guess. I don't know what, something about it just didn't quite ring true to me that
Yeah.
they would have her come back and be the one who, it seems to me like they got her in this jam, like they would never want to see her again or make sure she never works again. But what they do is they give her a job. She blackmails them,
Mhm.
right? She blackmails them into saying that she's going to tell everybody that it was a lie and that they printed it. And she doesn't care because her reputation's already shot. So she's a really, like, for most of the picture, I don't know about you. I felt like I don't know how to feel about her.
Yeah, well, she's in such a desperate state. I mean, I feel for her in that, like, she's the breadwinner in her life. She
Mhm.
lives with her mom. She lives with some family. I don't know what happened before, but that's the position. I think she's just going on like, this is what I got to do to survive.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
a good writer. I have a good imagination. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's sort of true. It's true-ish. It's got some truthiness to it, as Stephen Colbert would
Mhm.
say. It does
Mhm.
speak to a lot of people. They're also, we should say that they're talking about all these people that are on government programs too. So they
There's a lot of social commentary going on here, y'all. Just prepare yourself.
right. So they find Willoughby, who is Gary Cooper, and they think, oh, this is a diamond in the rough.
They're like, she says to the editor, like, when all these men show up claiming to be John Doe and claiming to have written the letter, she says to the editor, like, we have, look at all these guys who showed up. We can pick the perfect guy to be our John Doe. I'm sure any one of them would be happy to take some money to go along with this lie with us. And so we get this montage of all these different men coming in and her being like, no, this is not the guy. No, this is not the guy. No, this is not the guy. And then Gary Cooper shows up. Hmm.
And yeah, he's a diamond in the rough. So they give him $50 a week, which is a lot of money for them. He gets clothes. He has a hotel
They put
suite,
him up in a fancy hotel suite with
right?
a real bed.
And he brings his friend, the Colonel, who is Walter Brennan, as his buddy to keep an eye on him. And he's also like the voice of reason for him. Like, he realizes this kind of stinks right now, but I'll enjoy this for the time being. You know, I've got a place to stay. It's cozy. You know, I'm going to watch my friend. And so so these articles start going out, and then other media are starting to pay attention to this one story about John Doe. And that's when we find out is that, and John's having a crisis. I mean, or John Doe is having a crisis because he's
Yeah.
lying, and he knows he's lying. And that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to play baseball, and he hoped to make enough money, then maybe work for a car
Yes.
lot or something and make, you know.
They also make him the promise if he goes along with, because what the reason he got out of baseball was he had an injury. He injured his
Mhm.
arm. And so they make a promise to him that if he goes along with this lie, they not only will give him the hotel suite and the cash, but they will also fix his arm. But he's not that bright. He doesn't think it all the way through, like, oh, but I'm also going to be associated with this terrible scandal. People will get to know my face and they'll know who I am. It's not like I can just jump back into the ball world and people
Right.
will forget all about it. He very slowly starts to put it together that, like, he's now in an untenable situation. And um Barbara Stanwyck, meanwhile, so this is, again, there's so many differences between this and the source material, right? So our John Doe was a totally different kind of guy from a totally different kind of background with totally different motives.
Mhm.
He is after cash and survival, whereas the guy in the story is lonely and bored and just wants attention. Gary Cooper's character doesn't necessarily want the attention, but he is struggling to survive. And unlike in the story where our Mr. Rook uh, is never able to add any substance to his protest, if we want to call it that, against society. In the movie, we have Barbara Stanwyck, who is writing the substance. She supposedly has this father who has passed away. I guess he was a doctor, which explains like why their house is so nice.
No, yes.
Because her house is pretty nice. I'm like,
Yeah.
they seem okay. Maybe, Barbara, if you lived in a slightly
Downsize.
more downsized a little, you wouldn't have to work so hard. Um, but anyway, so she's channeling, like, apparently her father was a man of great principle. And so she's kind of channeling the way his views and all of that and putting them in to John Doe's mouth in these columns. So he's sharing his story in these columns, and as he's sharing his story, which is about loving your fellow man and what happened, and how did we end up in this terrible situation of society, um, that message is really resonating with people.
Yes. So why don't we play that scene, the next scene, and it's basically, and it goes on for a little bit, but just stick with it, because we're just talking about how people are explaining to him, you really mean a lot to us. Like you're changing how we interact with each other, how we treat one another, and we're treating one another with much more kindness and empathy. And so that's what, yeah. So we'll play that clip.
Come on, Colonel, let's get out of here.
John,
Please, I just got rid of one crowd.
but please, Mr. Mayor, tell him the John Doe Club wants to talk to him.
Let them in, Mr. Mayor. Let them come in.
Okay, folks, but remember your manners, no stampeding. Walk slow, like you do when you come to pay your taxes.
Okay. All right, give me a chance.
Come right in.
My name's Bert Hanson, Mr. Doe. I'm the head soda jerker at Schwabacker's drugstore. Well, sir, you see, me and my wife, we heard your broadcast, and we got quite a bang out of it. Especially my wife. Kept me up half the night saying, that man's right, honey. The trouble with the world is nobody gives a hoot about his neighbor. That's why everybody in town's sore and cranky at each other. And I kept saying, well, that's fine, but how's a guy going to go around loving the kind of neighbors we got? Old Sourpuss, for instance. You see, Sourpuss Smithers is a guy who lives all alone next door to us. He's a cranky old man that runs a second-hand furniture store. We haven't spoken to him for years. I always figured he was an ornery old gent that hated the world because he was always slamming his garage door and playing the radio so loud he kept half the neighbors up. Well, anyway, the next morning I'm out watering the lawn, and I look over, and there's Sourpuss on the other side of the hedge straightening out a dent in his fender. And my wife yells to me out the window. She says, go on, speak to him, Bert. And I figured, well, heck, I can't lose anything, so I yelled over to him, good morning, Mr. Smithers. He went right on pounding his fender. Was I burned? So I turned around to give my wife a dirty look, and she said, louder, louder, he didn't hear you. So in a voice you could have heard in the next county, I yelled, good morning, Mr. Smithers. Well, sir, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Old Sourpuss turned around surprised-like, and he put on a big smile, came over and took my hand like an old lodge brother, and he said, good morning, Hanson. I've been wanting to talk to you for years, only I thought you didn't like me. And then he started chatting away like a happy little kid, and he got so excited his eyes all... Well, Mr. Doe, before we got through, I found out Smithers is a swell egg, only he's pretty deaf, and that accounts for all the noises. And he says it's a shame how little we know about our neighbors. And then he got an idea, and he said, how's about inviting everybody someplace where we can all get together and know each other a little better? Well, I'm feeling so good by this time, I'm ripe for anything, so Smithers goes around the neighborhood inviting everybody to a meeting at the schoolhouse, and I tell everybody that comes in the store, including Mr. Schwabacker, my boss. I'm talking too much.
You get the idea. You're on mute.
Sorry, that's Regis Toomey as Bert Hanson, the soda jerk. I love this. Bert, as Regis Toomey, by the way, was a character actor. He was in so many movies. Oh my goodness, just a crazy long resume. He was in, I was looking for movies that we talked about. The only one that I could find that we've discussed was The Bishop's Wife.
Oh.
He was in that. but yeah, no, he's absolutely wonderful. And he does, he's talking, he's going on and on and on. And then his wife chimes in. But it's a wonderful scene because what you heard at the beginning of the clip is as we said, Long John Willoughby, aka John Doe, aka Gary Cooper, he is slowly, very slowly putting the pieces together of like just what kind of a jam he's gotten himself into. And he's about to just walk away from all of it, which he probably really should have done. but but just as he's about to get himself out of this situation, all of these people show up. It's now become a movement. I love when the mayor says, just walk slowly like you do when you pay your taxes.
As we all do. But they get together and they start to realize, and they say in later on in the clip, but they say, we helped him and now he waters the lawn, and this person helps at the school and this person does this. And it's like, so they're off of public assistance, and because they're now more, helping the society more, but they're also helping each other more. And so these are just the regular John and Jane Does across the country. And this takes off. I mean, they're based in Los Angeles. They don't say what city they're in, but it's LA. But this takes off around the country, and then they realize like, oh wait, this could be a third party.
Yes. So the scheming billionaire who bought the newspaper in the first place, he right away is like, oh, interesting. They're forming these clubs. Let's fund them. Let's fund these clubs so that let's get as many of them across the map as we can possibly get. This is great. And so it's not really about selling newspapers anymore. It kind of doesn't make any sense. And people are even in his immediate circle are like, well, that's nice, but why are you funding all of these clubs out of your own pocket? Isn't that awfully expensive? Like, what's in it for you? And he's like, never mind about that. Just
a good citizen, that's all.
Yeah, let's just get that John Doe out there talking to people. And so he sends them on a speaking tour and all of this. And the whole time, Gary Cooper is he's like, feels really stuck now because they're not his words. They're right. Barbara Stanwyck's words. And he certainly people are lovely to him, but he feels like a fraud because he is one. And that feels yucky. And but now he's in a situation where, it would actually hurt people for him to walk away, and he realizes that, and so he is well and truly stuck. And then lo and behold, it turns out our billionaire's not such a nice guy. Shocking. He had political ambitions. What?
And John's ensnared in it. He's the public face, he's the public voice. And she's like the words that come out of their mouths, and they're both kind of in this jam. They're kind of stuck in this. And this is a third party that's supposed to be like, we're for the real Americans, the hardworking people, the ones that get up every day and that make this country.
But behind the scenes, he's like, they need an iron fist to rule them, so a little bit of fascism. Buy the newspapers and control the information, and tell the working people that you're really about them when you're really not about them. So
it'll give you a headache.
At this point, I'm starting to get a headache. Yeah.
Should we play the clip of one of the speeches that he gives, just so you could see it's Gary Cooper.
It's Gary Cooper. He's absolutely wonderful. But bear in mind, these words are supposed to be the words of Barbara Stanwyck's character. So he's delivering words that are not his own. And what I love the way he does this, this scene in particular, I think is so good. He's so believable in acting as though, by this I mean Gary Cooper, not the character. He really gives the impression of he's reading this speech and hearing these words for the first time, and he's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, that's a good idea," as he's reading it in real time. So here we go.
Well, people like the governor and that fellow there can stop worrying. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about us, the average guys, the John Does. If anybody should ask you what the average John Doe is like, you couldn't tell him because he's a million and one things. He's Mr. Big and Mr. Small. He's simple and he's wise. He's inherently honest, but he's got a streak of larceny in his heart. He seldom walks up to a public telephone without shoving his finger into the slot to see if somebody left a nickel there. He's the man the ads are written for. He's the feller everybody sells things to. He's Joe Dokes, the world's greatest stooge and the world's greatest strength. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we're a great family, the John Does. We're the meek who are supposed to inherit the earth. You'll find us everywhere. We raise the crops, we dig the mines, work the factories, keep the books, fly the planes, and drive the buses. And when a cop yells, "Stand back there, you," he means us, the John Does.
Well, what kind of a speech is that? Didn't you read it?
We've existed since time began. We built the pyramids. We saw Christ crucified, pulled the oars for Roman emperors, sailed the boats for Columbus, retreated from Moscow with Napoleon, and froze with Washington at Valley Forge. Yes, sir. We've been in there dodging left hooks since before history began to walk. In our struggle for freak the canvas many a time, but we always bounce back because we're the people, and we're tough.
A lot of the criticism of this film, then and now, is that it's quote unquote overwritten. But I think that's the point. I think it's we're she's supposed to be overwriting here because she's getting carried away with her own idealism and her own, frankly, she's a little drunk on her own power of putting these words in this guy's mouth and seeing the effect that it has on people. And so I think that's part of the point, is that it's overwritten. I think it's overwritten on very much on purpose. It's part of the story that she's really getting close to the line there. And yeah, it's just a fascinating piece of political theater.
Yes, the propaganda and the propaganda machine. And Gary Cooper is so good in this movie. Just playing it off like he's just reading it for the first time and he's stumbling over words, and it's just phenomenal. Eventually though, he realizes, like, I'm promising things and I'm a face of something that I don't even know what it is. It's becoming bigger than me. And
I'm not happier.
I'm not happier. I feel more responsibility for people because everyone keeps treating him like he's the second coming. He's the one that's going to save them all. And he's like, but it's a lie. And I don't write this. She writes this. And she's even sort of like not even understanding, because women don't have a lot of power. She's got this power, so she's using it as much as she can because she doesn't know how long she'll have it. But eventually what happens is he is being bribed in order to continue going. Like, they want him to run for office, but then they want to take over. What does that remind you of? And so he gives this big speech, and it's gorgeous the way they film it. There's thousands of extras in this Coliseum in LA.
It's a political convention. We're not told which party it's for, but so meanwhile, the billionaire Norton and his cronies are scheming to start this third party, the John Doe Party. I'm a little confused as to whether that convention whether we've gotten as far as that's what that's for, or if he's at an existing party's political convention and they're going to parlay that into their launching of the third party. That wasn't quite clear to me, but nevertheless, it is a very convincing portrayal of a political convention. It has the real, like, the raw energy of it, and also the kind of corniness of it. And again, this film goes back and forth between comedy and tragedy, and comedy and tragedy. And that scene where he's trying to talk to them. He's trying to tell them the actual truth. He's a fraud and this is what's actually going on. And they cut the sound on him, and it is heartbreaking.
And they
It's just
and he's exposed for being a fraud, but everyone's mad at him. And he's desperately trying to be like, look, this is what I really believe, though, and we really we can count on each other. We really should be there for one another. We have more power than we think we have, but
right.
the people who are in power and the people just underneath them don't want that to be interfered with. They don't want people to know. They don't want them to be knowledgeable. They don't want them to think that they have any kind of power. They want them to feel like, just give us the power and we'll take care of you.
Right.
So then they say that, oh, he's a fraud, and then the cops won't let him speak, and then when he does speak, they cut the wires, and so he's really in a tailspin, as it were. And much like It's a Wonderful Life, and there's a lot of I couldn't believe how much was there, but like he's on a bridge, and he's like thinking he's like at a top building, right? And he's just
he's on top of the building that he's on top of City Hall, where he originally had said that he was going to jump.
The same way as Jimmy Stewart is
filmed.
It
really is.
It's absolutely, like, I would say,
Definitely.
like shot for shot. It looks exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think I have that clip.
Yes,
next.
we do. We have that clip.
I wouldn't do that if I were you, John. It'll do you no good. The mayor has policemen downstairs with instructions to remove all marks of identification you may have on your person. You'll be buried in Potter's Field, and you will have accomplished nothing.
I've taken care of that. I've already mailed a copy of this letter to Mr. Connell.
John, why don't you forget this foolishness?
Stop right where you are, Mr. Norton, if you don't want to go overboard with me. I'm glad you gentlemen are here. You killed the John Doe movement, all right. But you're going to see it born all over again.
It's the church bells. It's the snow.
The snow. And I wouldn't do that if I were you, except in this case, it's not an angel that is stopping him. It's our bad villain, D.B. Norton, played by Edward Arnold, who is absolutely wonderful. He's in Mr. Smith as well. He does a really good job, Edward Arnold, of our villain, of being, for most of the picture, I'm going to say, like, you're not quite sure what his motive is. And he has this kind of, because again, we do have this little comedy flirtation that's going on throughout the film. He has this almost avuncular energy for a lot of it. And then we learn, like, there's a, like, he is a dictator. You know, he really is a real bad fascist guy. And when it is revealed, you just see, like, the depth of his evil, and there he is. And he comes out of the shadows with his whole little band of cronies behind him. It's great. It's just great. And then we have, so he's, there he is. He has already resigned himself at this point. John, Gary Cooper's character, has resigned himself that he is going to jump. He doesn't see, he's trapped.
Way around it.
He doesn't have any way around it. And he really legitimately, unlike in the source material in the story where he's like, well, there's just no other way. He's merely saying that as a way to sound deep. But this guy really feels like genuinely feels like he has no other way out. He's done everything that he can possibly do, and he can't live with himself
right,
being their stooge. So,
And being a phony
um,
to all
and
these
being a
people.
phony. And so even as Eddie Arnold is saying to him, like, it's no use, like nobody will know who you were. He doesn't care. He's beyond caring about that. And we really think he's going to jump. But then of course, Barbara Stanwyck shows up, and also more significantly, who shows up is Bert the soda jerk and his
And his
lovely wife
Ann.
and Sourpuss.
And
There they
Sourpuss,
are.
the original that they had there. They filmed, we should say that they filmed either 4 or 5 different endings. Capra could not decide
Wow.
how to finish this movie. So what they did then is they filmed like 3 or 4 different endings, and they showed it at theaters on the
Tested it.
West Coast to test it. And people hated these different endings until he finally, the compromise he came up with is, we'll let him live because it's Gary Cooper, and we'll have Barbara Stanwyck come in and be his rescuer, but also but more of just somebody who's like shining a light to him, like, no, you became something real to people, and it actually sparked something inside of you. This is genuine. It started out phony, but it's become genuine, and you shouldn't throw it away. We can definitely, if we did it before, we can do it again. And she's just grabbing him by the lapels.
And then she passes out.
And then she passes out. And then
she's sick. That's another little plot point, is that she's sick. She's got a fever for some reason, and she's too sick to go out. And I don't know. She's not afraid of giving him her whatever it is that she has.
No.
but okay. But it's very dramatic.
I think I have that clip there.
Yeah, let's play that clip. Hold on.
Mr. Doe, you don't have to. We're with you, Mr. Doe. We just lost our heads and acted like a mob.
What Bert's trying to say is that we need you, Mr. Doe. There were a lot of us that didn't believe what that man said. We were going to start up our John Doe Club again, whether we saw you or not, weren't we, Bert? And there were a lot of others that were going to do the same thing. Well, Mr. Sourpuss even got a letter from his cousin in Toledo.
I got it right here, Mr. Doe.
Only it'd be a lot easier with you. Please. Please come with us, Mr. Doe.
Long John.
Mr. Doe. Here, we'll help you with her. She'll be all right.
Mr. Doe, take her right down to the car. Right up. Look, we got a car right down to her.
They are Norton, the people. Try and lick that.
And I burst into tears.
Yes.
By the way, Bert the soda jerk's wife, played by Ann Doran, wonderful character actress. Many of us know her as James Dean's mom in Rebel Without a Cause. Just to give you an idea of her range, like she's kind of like an awful character in that. She's a really yucky woman in that film, and she's so wonderful and so kind and just so. I just love Bert and his wife. Like, I'm all over Bert and his wife.
I love them.
What is it about the name Bert in the Frank Capra films? Like,
yes, Bert and Ernie were
all the Berts.
the Berts. And the bells ringing. That's the exact ending of
That's such a Capra thing.
Yeah, it's such a Capra thing. Yeah, so,
and I think that's that part of that might be Warner Brothers trying to be like, don't forget, he's over here now. Love. It's Gary Cooper, and they've got great chemistry. Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck have really wonderful chemistry. He's falling in love with her way before she's falling in love with him. She's really in love with her power that she has of this character that she's created, and that's this movement that's sparked this movement before she really sees him, who he really is, at all. Um, and even at the end, I'm like, who do you really know this guy? I mean, yeah, we like I feel like we know him better than you know him. But it's it's just so well acted and just it's very very moving. I'm sorry, it's a little too close to home for me this week, but yeah, like I said, the movie ended and I just completely burst into tears
Yeah.
after watching it. Um
And
I,
I
I
did the first time I saw it too, and it wasn't the state of the world was it was
yeah,
different. But
true.
and I love that it's two women, by the way, that like are the people that save him, that
Yeah,
basically save the rest of us.
yeah.
Just
Just putting
throwing
that
it
out
out
there.
there. Yeah.
Um so yes, and I do wonder like what if she hadn't had that little brain spark to create this character at the last minute after she'd been fired from her job? What would have happened then? I don't
Everybody.
know. I think it would have been worse.
Yes.
So it's just very interesting examination of our culture and our media landscape and our oligarchy and so on and so on and so on. Um, I just loved it. Just loved it.
Yeah.
Why this picture should be a bigger deal, I feel.
And for some reason, I think his other pictures for whatever. I mean, it came out like a few months, like maybe 6 months before what happened at Pearl Harbor. America was
Mm,
very different after that. I mean, for the
true.
next several years. I don't know. But it, like we said, it fell into public domain, and then after that, when video started becoming popular, there are a lot of different versions of video, but the quality went down and down and down with each re-release. So there are people who did uh, preserve it, and one of them was TCM, and so they've shown it. And then I said to Margot, I don't know if I said this on the air, but I also saw there on YouTube. You can find several versions of this movie, and one of them was in color. And it was back when they used to colorize movies.
Oh, it's really a bad job of the
It's not
colorization.
great.
Ooh.
You lose a lot without the black and white. There's a lot that's said here
It's
in black and
so
white that really
exactly.
resonates better.
This film is the lighting
Mhm.
is so beautifully done. And there's so many and very much like in Mr. Smith. We have a lot of different kinds of lighting that we're doing. I don't think we have a lot of daylight going on like in Mr. Smith, but we have those like that convention scene really feels so authentic. The scene of DB Norton and his cronies, like, around the dinner table in his lavish mountain mansion, it seems very realistic, like, it's beautifully lit, uh, and the scene where he's in the snow there on the top of City Hall, and it's dark, and the snow behind him, and and the light, like, reflecting on his face.
Mhm.
Oh, it's wonderful. So good. So I think this is a straight up movie.
Yes. Yes.
Clear
Yes. Yes.
victory for the movie. Story is very good, but it's a very different kind of message, and it was written at a very different time in history.
Yes.
Very, very different landscape in the 20s versus in
The
1941.
40s. Yeah, it's 20 years later. A
Oh, yeah.
lot had happened.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, just watch it. It's easy to find.
Yes, yeah.
But do yourself a favor and watch the restored version because it is I mean, it's a shame that it was in such bad condition for so long because it was so beautifully crafted. It's such a great team behind this. The score is very good, but I think in particular is the lighting of Gary Cooper's face is a masterpiece. Just, oh, love.
I could see why Patricia Neal was obsessed with him.
Yeah.
I get
He
it.
he, by the way, yeah, he was married to the same wife for many, 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 many years, but he was a notorious womanizer. Gary Cooper.
Womanizer, womanizer.
Yeah.
And Patricia Neal, like, she almost mental health issues from it. Like when their breakup
Yeah.
happened, she was
Yeah.
really devastated because they had an on and
Mhm.
off thing for almost a decade, I want to say, before she married Roald Dahl and then all that
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, it's a wonderful movie. It's not the feel good hit of the summer. It's a bit
No, it's gonna make you
dark.
think in some uncomfortable ways, but only because there's some stuff we haven't dealt with. I thought for a moment, because I thought I was watching a different film than I ended up watching. I thought as it was going, it was the story was rolling along. I thought it was going to be like a face in the crowd, but it's like the anti face in the crowd.
Yeah.
It's a similar story, but even to the female journalist, you know, but with a very different kind of character at its center. And so that is really good. Really, I just feel like we don't talk about this film enough. Why did I not know about this film? Love. Yeah, just watch it. Watch it. Just, yeah.
Movie.
Maybe watch it on Tuesday. In case you find yourself with nothing to do this week. Yeah. Definitely, I would say movie. Let's talk about, we have something really, really interesting coming up next.
The Cyndi Lauper? The hint being Cyndi Lauper? Okay.
The hint being Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi Lauper. So we have a couple of fun episodes coming up that we'll put together, but the first one is going to be a song. And we have done songs to movies a few times, and people think, well, how long can that go? We've actually talked for well over an hour about them, because we talk about the artist, we talk about the time that it took place.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Girls Just Want to Have Fun. So it's the Cyndi Lauper song, which was written by one of the Hooters, by the way. It was a man.
I'm sorry, that's fun. It was only one of the Hooters?
It's one of the Hooters wrote this song.
Did not know that.
Yes.
I thought it was Andrew Gold.
No.
That's
Thank You for Being a Friend.
That's Thank You for Being a Friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's we'll say is next week. So it's one of the Hooters. So, and it was Cyndi Lauper's big hit. We'll talk all about it because there's a lot going on. There's about wrestling that's going on there. It's about MTV. It's talking about Lauper versus Madonna, which became a thing in the media for some dumb reason. We had to be on one bandwagon, or that was it. But and then movie. That's the reason why. There's a movie called Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and it's with Sarah Jessica Parker, baby Sarah Jessica Parker, and baby Helen Hunt, and they're dancing. And it's fun.
I haven't seen this for a minute. Now, this I definitely have seen.
Yes.
And it's been a minute. I'm very excited.
And very easy to get your hands on. So definitely check that out. That's for next week. But as you can hear from the way we're talking, we talk about a lot of different ideas for film adaptations coming from all kinds of different sources. So if you have your ideas of something you want to suggest to us, definitely check out the Facebook page while we have in the Facebook group, while we have that up there. But please send it to us. All those places I mentioned at the top of the show. And our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast, spelled it out, @gmail.com. And absolutely, if you want some stickers, just please, send us your address via that email, and we will get them out to you. Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick for Threads and Instagram, and I'm at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok. We'll see what's going on with that.
I don't know if you saw, even as we've been talking here, it's been reinstated.
I wonder whose idea that was. And it's very, And also Blue Sky. And we're definitely trying to get the Blue Sky going. And each of us has our YouTube page. So you can actually watch this show. You can see all the clips. So mine is at my name, Margot Donahue. And hers is at She's Nacho Mama. And we get lots of people who stream the show, by the way. A lot of YouTube people that check it out. Yeah, no idea.
Surprised to learn that. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Yeah.
Especially for this movie where the trailer was like all about the visuals.
All right, everyone. Thank you once again. And we will be back soon with a new episode.
Well, all those guys in the picture.
Never mind those guys. All right, stand up. Now, let's see what you look like when you protest.
Against what?
Against anything. Just protest.
You got me.
Oh, look, I'm the umpire, and you just cut the heart of the plate with your fast one, and I called it a ball. What would you do?
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah.
Why can't you call him right, you boneheaded...
Grab it, Eddie, grab it! Yes.